Okay. So this is the opening event, the grand gala event with Dr. Paula Arai, who I'll introduce in a moment. We've had the pleasure of planning with her and practicing with her and learning from her and her vast commitment and knowledge about women in Buddhism, but I'll say more. Seems more than appropriate that we open this series with her. So this is a year-long series planned by the Soto Zen Buddhist Association Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Committee. Our little committee is small, but we are mighty. We are very determined to bring these offerings to all of you because there are so many amazing women teachers and leaders, and to bring them forward in this way, we all deeply hope and trust will benefit all beings. We're calling this Celebrating the Voices of Women in Buddhism, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We're grateful to the board, the Soto Zen Buddhist Association of Directors, for supporting this work, and for the Institute of Buddhist Studies for hosting this workshop today. It was like a gift to be in this building and to experience the breadth and beauty of this practice right here. And the Frederick Lenz, I hope I said that right, Foundation for American Buddhism, that's making this series possible through their generous funding. While the Soto Zen Buddhist Association is a professional organization of Soto Zen priests, our intention is through this series and ongoing to welcome the many, many lay people that are here, and guests online and here, and the priests in our tradition and beyond. Our next event will be February 17th, and it will be also hybrid like this, and it will be on the East Coast. Dharma talk and discussion with Reverend Chinyo Atkinson at the Brooklyn Zen Center. We hope that you'll join us for that, and then I'm not going to go into all of the other amazing events and people and panels that we have planned for the rest of the year, but take my word for it, it's going to be. Okay. Our speaker today is Dr. Paula Arai. If I don't get any of this right, please correct me. Professor of Women and Buddhist Studies, the Institute of Buddhist Studies. Her life work illuminates the vital role of women in Buddhism and has inspired and is inspiring and will continue to inspire countless individuals to revisit and reevaluate the history and teachings of our tradition. I've read, I trust many of you have, and if you haven't, I would highly recommend that, as Dr. Arai is a specialist in Japanese Soto Zen women on the ground. She has written Women Living Zen, Japanese Soto Buddhist Nuns, and Bringing Zen Home, the Healing Heart of Japanese Women Rituals. Her beautiful collaborative work with Isaki Tsuneo, did I say? Iwasaki. Please, yes. I hope you all have or find this Painting Enlightenment, Healing Visions of the Heart Sutra. Very, very beautiful. And has led to curated exhibits at museums, universities, and conferences over the past almost decade. And her most recent book, The Little Book of Zen Healing, Japanese Rituals for Beauty, Harmony, and Love. She midwives healing rituals and presents them in a range of Buddhist settings. and we're going to be able to partake in one of them this afternoon. I think I just want to take a moment to express the joy and gratitude of getting to work with you. I said to Dr. Arai, I was reading her credentials, which are more than impressive. And my experience of her is she's just an enormously humble, generous, accessible, kind, visionary, and very grounded human being and woman. So I thank you so much for being here, and really look forward to our time, and with a great sense of wonder of what we're going to conjure up together.
Rarely do I start a presentation crying. It is so beautiful to see you here today. Thank you for the time, everything you've had to do to be here. It takes all of us to make this come to life. And I've spent much of my life at my desk alone, and so to be here with you fills me with enormous joy. Bowing to lotuses blossoming in the mud. Gratitude as agent for change. Bowing never left my Japanese mother's body. She moved to the United States in her early 30s. Even decades later, she bowed when expressing gratitude. Thank you. And when apologizing, I'm sorry. She taught me that gratitude and respect were expressed through ritualized actions. Due to this upbringing, I have been fascinated with the power of ritual in human society. Humans thrive on ritual. Indeed, we have created civilizations out of ritual. They evoke our emotions and influence how we reason. They communicate our gratitude and our pain. Ritual operates in all spheres of human interaction: international relations, economics, domestic politics, community development, and interpersonal interactions. Unlocking the dynamic of ritualized behaviors reveals how power is wielded in ways both subtle and dramatic. The simple gesture of bowing has sundered international relations, opened coffers, reconciled estranged families, and empowered individuals to achieve their highest aspiration. Ritual acts are encoded with the cosmological, ontological, teleological, and ethical orientations of a culture. They inscribe individual and community identity and orient humans to their landscapes, social norms, and metaphysical forces and beings. Rituals have transactive power, meaning they can affect change and create new identities and realities. The visceral resonance of rituals is the source of their power as they shape experience and behavior. Rituals reach levels of psyche and body that intellectual explanation cannot. They can evoke change in personal lives, communal settings, and even international relations. Rituals inhabit the cross-currents and contested spaces of political, medical, religious, moral, aesthetic, and everyday interactions, where they can promote harmony or incite conflict. The power of ritualized bows is a fascinating phenomenon as it has played out in human interaction. A bow can mean different things depending on the context. From a Western feminist perspective, a woman bowing to a man likely means the woman is subordinate. Bowing embodies her submission. In an Asian context, a bow can mean respect or even gratitude. In all cases, it is a ritualized mode of interacting where power is transacted by the action. Dynamics between China, Taiwan, Korea, and Japan are predictably affected by whether the Prime Minister of Japan will bow at Yasukuni Shrine, where the war dead are honored. If he bows, tension rises. If he does not bow, tensions settle. Bowing has also been part of a non-confrontational mode of effecting social change. For example, Korean farmers enlisted bowing as part of their protest at the 2005 World Trade Organization meeting in Hong Kong. The media reported that they would come, the farmers that is, would come to wreak havoc, predisposing people to assume in Hong Kong, to assume they would be unpleasant. The farmers performed the Buddhist pilgrimage ritual, signifying deep respect and longing. Take 3 steps, prostrate. Take 3 more steps, prostrate, and so on. By the end of the day, citizens of Hong Kong were handing them bottles of water. In ethological terms, bowing is a distinctly vulnerable position for an animal to put its body in. It prevents seeing what is around one, and being down low leaves one open to potential attack. If there are other animals nearby trying to assert power over you, crouching in a bow would likely activate the fight or flight response. However, when one bows voluntarily as an expression of gratitude, one has chosen to trust that the surroundings are safe. Moreover, gratitude opens the heart to kindness and primes it for acceptance. This quiet and simple act seems to generate a cascade of biochemical, electrical, and spiritual activities quite opposite of the fight or flight response. Perhaps there is a respect and be kind response. Considering the embodied nature of ritual activities, there are 2 basic types of motions: move to control or move to sense. When danger is perceived, one does not have time to sense. One moves to survive. Ritualized action like bowing is moving to sense. In addition, when bowing with hands together in gassho, one completes the circuit in the body, connecting the left and right sides of the body, including the brain. When connected like this, it is harder to feel anger. Try it, maybe not now. And it is easier to feel calm and safe. Bowing with palms together is a connecting activity. A bow implies one is not alone in the universe, even if one is alone in a room. The boundaries of self and other become more fluid in this ritualized posture, and one can more easily experience a sense of self as the relational self, that one is because others are too. Because of neuroplasticity, bowing in gratitude over and over undoubtedly changes the brain. It seems such bowing expands the portal through which one can perceive safe conditions, which in turn helps one heal. Since our expectations influence sensory processing, the act of consciously bowing as an expression of gratitude can rewire our brains so that what once was felt as unsafe becomes an occasion to feel safe and connected. When the body feels safe, the immune system can function better. Due to our neuroplasticity, bowing in gratitude over and over undoubtedly changes the brain and strengthens the practitioner's perception of safety and thereby increases our ability to heal. Thus, through exploring the power inherent in this ritual, we can discover new possibilities for bringing the benefits of bowing to contemporary society. Through understanding how ritual power works, we can design rituals to generate healing. Bowing is a ritualized gesture found throughout the Buddhist world. It is the most ubiquitous of the Buddhist ritual practices. It helps people actualize connections in a vast dynamic flux aimed at the cessation of suffering. Exploring the power inherent in rituals encoded with this expansive and inclusive orientation indicates the possibilities for adaptation in healing society. From a Buddhist perspective, complete healing involves healing the internal and external environments. For a sharp distinction between social and personal transformation cannot be drawn. To borrow Joanna Macy's phrase, everything is interconnected in a mutually causative dynamic. Buddhist bowing is a ritualized action encoded with respect and gratitude. It is an embodied expression of our interdependence. This is the key to understanding the power of bowing in a Buddhist context. Bowing has been and can be used as a non-confrontational mode of effecting social change. My research reveals that Japanese Buddhist nuns brought equality to sect regulations and employed bowing in gratitude to facilitate transformation and healing activity. Bowing for change, Anan Koshi. Japanese Buddhist history is filled with women who have devoted themselves to a Buddhist way of life, requiring courage, creativity, and ritual expertise. Illustrations of Japanese Buddhist women's activities from various time periods reveal that women have found ways to empower themselves in diverse circumstances. They have established precedents in Buddhist practice and have accomplished many of their goals, even when there was systematic institutional resistance. I have to tell you something I learned yesterday. Women were prohibited from going to certain mountaintops by the male Buddhists, Koyasan major temple outside of Kyoto. And there was a woman who was so devout, she donated statues of Buddhas that she had made, and she put her hair inside so her body would get in. I just love her. So we need to start imagining and start seeing this kind of creativity women have had all along. We wouldn't be here if they hadn't. Analysis of Japanese Buddhist women's accomplishments show that rituals played a key role in their strategy. Today, Japanese Buddhist nuns still derive empowerment from the knowledge that it was a woman who inaugurated the Buddhist monastic path in Japan in 584 CE. Between that initial act and today, however, currents in society shifted many times, forcing women to find innovative ways to continue the path of Buddhist renunciation. Their actions demonstrate that they saw themselves as having the capacity to live according to the Dharma, regardless of what the male-dominated institutions of the day did. During the 20th century, Soto nuns directed the course of their lives with the specific understanding that Dogen supported women. Documents testify to the fact that traditional Soto Zen nuns were undaunted by the male-dominated sectarian administration. They led their sect through educational and institutional reforms that reflected their ideas of Dogen's egalitarian teachings. Through the mode of ceremonial ritual, nuns wielded a powerful way to express their emotional and political concerns. Focusing upon one particular ritual, the Anan Koshki, I elucidate how the ritual, cloaked in the non-contentious expression of gratitude, functions to legitimize and empower the nuns. Soto nuns perform the Anan Koshki ceremony to thank Ananda for what they maintain was his act of wisdom in entreating Shakyamuni to allow women to enter the path of renunciation. The Anan Koshki catalyzed Soto nuns to fight for, and by the 1960s, win equal rights in the institutional records of the Soto sect administration. The Anan Koshki's power lies in its affirmation of nuns. The ritual ends with the declaration that all women can attain enlightenment. And from this vantage point, the erroneous ways of the male-dominated institution seem glaring, yet inherently surmountable. In effect, the Anan Koshki authorizes nuns to demand Buddhist ideals be practiced despite sexism. The historical background of the Anan Koshki. The Anan Koshki is one of a number of ritual ceremonies called Koshki. Koshki are performed on special occasions like this one, and they are particularly designed for praising and offering gratitude to an important Buddhist figure, such as Shakyamuni Buddha, Bodhidharma, Jizo Bosatsu, and the Rakan Arhats. Cultivating awareness of one's indebtedness to these figures and expressing gratitude for one's own practice is the impetus and core of this type of ceremony. The minimal historical information currently available gives us some clues to the circumstances that give rise to the Anan Koshki ritual performed by Soto Zen nuns today. The earliest record of a sighting of this type of ceremony is found in Fa Xian's late 4th, early 5th century record of Buddhistic kingdoms, in which he mentions seeing nuns in India perform a ceremony to Ananda. More research, however, is needed in order to give a full history of this early ritual form. The trail becomes visible in Japan, where the ritual takes the form of a koshiki, a type of ceremony performed largely in the Heian and Kamakura periods. Historical documents indicate that 13th century Buddhist master Myoe Shonin wrote an Anan Koshiki. It was kept in the Sutra Pavilion of Kozan Temple. In July of 1829, the Soto Zen nun Kanko Ni of Owari no Kuni, present-day Nagoya, copied the Anan Koshiki text from the Kozan Temple and recreated the ceremony. A woodblock carving was made and the ritual text was passed around for nuns to use. Kanko Ni was Mizuno Jorin's teacher. With the assistance of 3 other nuns, Mizuno Jorin was the leading founder of the Soto Zen Monastery for Women in Nagoya in 1903. It is currently called the Aichi Senmon Nisodo. The nuns who trained at this monastery were the prime movers in establishing egalitarian regulations for the Soto Zen sect. With the advantage of historical perspective, we can see that the revitalization of this nun's ritual occurred on the eve of nuns launching a public and institutional effort to bring egalitarian practices to bear on 20th century Soto regulations. Not only was the timing important here, but the actors were as well. The teacher, Kankoni, of the nun Mizuno Jorin, who led the movement to establish an official Soto Zen monastery for women, is the one who revived the ceremony. This relationship of events and people then strongly suggests that performing a ritual that acknowledges the legitimacy and importance of being Buddhist monastic women helped cultivate a community of women who were not dissuaded by the male-dominated institutional attempt to treat nuns as though they were subordinate to monks. The Anan Koshiki, however, is not included in the 18-volume Soto Shuzensho, nor in the 10-volume Zoku Soto Shuzensho texts that collectively purport to include all Soto Zen ritual. To this day, the one article in Japanese that described this ritual said that it was no longer performed today. Therefore, field research was essential to learn about the performance of this ritual, its importance to Soto Zen nuns, and its place in contemporary Japanese Buddhism. So the research on the ground is critical for learning about women. Let me share an overview of this ritual before then we'll watch a 14-minute clip that I made of the parts of the ritual I will highlight. So when you're listening, it may just be a blur of disorienting images, but then maybe they will land somewhere when you're watching. I thought, which do I do first? But I'll talk first. I will share highlights of the recording of the Anan Koshiki held at Aichi Senmon Nisodo. It serves as an inspiration for the ritual I midwifed for today, and that we will offer after lunch and workshop in small groups. The Anan Koshiki begins when the lead celebrant, the shikishi, enters with bells and bows. As in all koshiki, the first major section is the Sangege, a verse chanted while 3 nuns process around the worship hall. The first carries an incense burner, shoko. The second sprinkles pure water about with a pine branch, seisui, and the third scatters paper lotus blossom petals, sange, throughout the worship hall. A subsequent section of the ceremony, the Nyo Hachizu, is also typical of all koshiki. This part of the ceremony is a symbol performance, CY symbol, which serves as a musical offering that raises the intensity of the ritual proceedings. Next, offerings to Ananda are placed on the main altar. Although the offerings, candles, flowers, incense, tea, rice, and cakes, are typical, the utensils are refined and the method of handling them is extremely formal and elaborate. The lead celebrant makes the formal offerings while 5 nuns assist. Each food item is placed elegantly on tall red lacquer trays. The angle of the fingers and the placement of the thumbs on the tray are carefully practiced to achieve an elegant appearance and embodied gesture of respect. The Simon is a formally prepared explanation of the figure honored in the ritual. Therefore, the Simon of the Anand Koshki explains Ananda's activities and merits. The Sanskrit chanting Bombay follows. It is the most ritually dramatic part of the ritual. 2 nuns enter the worship hall and do 3 full prostrations before the altar. Then, before the esoteric chanting begins, the text is brought into the main worship hall very dramatically, thus preparing people for something significant. With dynamic and exacting motion, a nun carries in the formal red ornamented stand upon which the text lies, and places it before the 2 nuns who will perform the chanting. The Bombay chant is more melodic than most chants done in Zen rituals, and there is a sense of gravity to it, slow tempo. This chant lasts about 5 minutes. The text of the chant, however, is short. Nyorai myo shiki shinze. That is, the miraculous form, body, and world of the thus come one. Most of the chant's emphasis is on the word myo, which in this context invokes a sense of miraculous awe. Aoyama Roshi, the current abbess of Aichi-Senmon Misodo, teaches that this verse may have been written by Mahaprajapati to express her profound joy on having first seen the enlightened Buddha. The Shikimon details the reasons why the nuns have lifted Ananda up for such profound gratitude. It includes recounting the legend that Ananda reasoned with Shakyamuni on behalf of the women who Mahaprajapati led to become renunciants on the Buddhist path. Aoyama Roshi stressed to me in an interview that Shakyamuni came to understand he had to treat Mahaprajapati with at least the same compassion she had shown him. An offering of prayers, echo, to transfer merit to all sentient beings follows. The lead chanter chants in a loud and clear voice. We sentient beings all together realize the Buddha way. This is followed by the climax of the ceremony when the lead chanter announces, now all women like Queen Vaidehi transform their bodies with 5 limitations and attain Buddhahood. A short ritual called the Anantam is performed at the end of the Anand Koshki. The chanting for this ceremony is reminiscent of Indian music, creating an atmosphere that ritually transports one back to the era in which Shakyamuni, Ananda, and Mahaprajapati lived. The lead chanter begins the ceremony with the phrase, Namo Daihi Anand Son, praise to the great compassion of Anand. All participants, nuns and laity, stand with hands held in gasho and repeat this phrase after each of the 10 praises chanted by the lead chanter. After a praise and refrain chant is completed, all do a full prostration. The first praise is to Shakyamuni's enlightenment and birthday. The 4th praise is for Ananda's having ears to hear the wonderful Dharma. The 10th is praise for entering Nirvana. Zena, please share the clip. reveal a number of things accomplished by the ritual. These accomplishments are not immediately obvious in the performance of the ritual itself, but are best seen when placed in a social and historical context. For rituals are dynamic aspects of a culture and both shape and are shaped by it. The goals of the Anand Koshki include praising and thanking Ananda, Shakyamuni, and Mahaprajapati, cultivating virtues of respect and gratitude, affirming the women's self-identity as legitimate Buddhist nuns, confirming that being a Buddhist nun is a positive thing, eliciting recognition from the community that women are disciples of the Buddha, gathering donations, verifying the nun's ability to attain Buddhahood, and winning equal status with men in the Soto Zen sect regulations. As Bell shows, rituals are strategic actions that use culturally specific tactics to achieve particular ends. The fundamental strategy employed by this ritual is the use of a ceremonial format that is firmly established in the Japanese Buddhist repertoire of ceremonial rituals. The use of the Koshki format, for example, puts the nuns ritually on the same plane as men, who are the normative performers of Koshki. By using this format, nuns do not have to fight for the right to do this ritual. And the ritual's performance signals to monks and laity alike that nuns and monks are not fundamentally different. It is a non-abrasive method, which makes the act of performance itself an actualization of the nun's goal of equality with monks. It confirms for the laity attending the ritual that the nun's acts are authoritative. In attending, laity are then brought into the drama of bringing about gender parity among renunciants, thereby acting as witnesses to the legitimation of contemporary nuns as Dharma heirs. The use of Sanskrit and classical Japanese also establishes the nun's authority. Through the use of esoteric chants, they are seen by the laity to have special and hence empowering knowledge. Moreover, that nuns know how to handle sacred ritual implements and make elaborate offerings further establishes their authority and high rank in the community. The ornamentation around the altar area and the ritual act of scattering lotus blossoms, sprinkling spiritually pure water, and burning incense cultivate a sensory experience that distinguishes the place and time of ritual and the nun's performance of it as authoritative. While all is done explicitly to thank Ananda, implicitly, the nuns are demonstrating their spiritual power and status. A ritual performed on behalf of the ancestors of the laity in attendance establishes a reciprocal relationship between the laity and nuns. Nuns offer the ritual to benefit the lay people, and the lay people offer donations for this service, which help the nuns pay the bills. Tacitly, the very presence of the laity empowers the nuns, for it shows that they recognize the nuns as legitimate, efficacious, and authorized to perform the rituals. In return, The nuns bestow on the laity the confirmation that they are devout lay Buddhists. The practice of koshiki in Zen contrasts with the iconoclastic impulse common in popular Western representations of Zen. Koshiki are ritualized communal reifications of individuals and formal expressions of gratitude to them. The values that are manifested and inculcated in the ceremony include respect, gratitude, remembrance, and compassion. Through all the ways in which Ananda is praised, the ritual teaches people, both lay and monastic, what being an exemplary Buddhist entails. The ritual also creates and enforces the patterns of human relations hoped for outside the performance of the ritual. The actual practice of being grateful is one of the ways nuns are empowered through this ritual. Being a grateful person, especially in the gift-giving culture of Japan, facilitates one's agency with other members of the community. For having strong reciprocal relationships then makes one a more effective actor in society. The nun's public display of gratitude to a person who lived nearly 2,500 years ago effectively suggests to the people in attendance that these nuns are people with whom one would want to have close relationships, because one can be assured of being respected and long appreciated. Moreover, cultivating the virtues found in this ritual probably increased the nuns' effectiveness during the first half of the 20th century, when they challenged the sectarian authorities who were in charge of the monastic regulations. My research on Zen nuns revealed that nuns have been and continue to be highly respected in Japanese society because of their adherence to traditional Buddhist virtues as exemplified in the Anan Koshiki. In these ways, the Anan Koshiki contributes to establishing the meaning and content of being a Zen Buddhist, using nuns as exemplars. Moreover, through the Anan Koshiki, it becomes apparent that the power of Zen is not in self, but in community. The act of jointly praising and offering gratitude to Ananda makes the nuns a distinct group. First, it gives identity to the nuns themselves. These women belong to a long line of other women committed to living their lives in accordance with the Buddha's teachings. The ritual also highlights the merits of the monastic life, making it explicitly clear that those who enter this path are dedicated and serious disciples of the Buddha, dispelling the misinformed image that they are trying to escape to the nunnery because they could not succeed at anything else. The koshiki format also helps nuns accomplish their goal of legitimizing themselves effectively, yet tacitly. Because a koshiki is a ceremony of gratitude, it humbles the performers before the exalted figure, being singled out for appreciation. But the very act of exalting exalts the nuns. To praise Ananda for having served Shakyamuni for 25 years also establishes that Ananda knew Shakyamuni intimately, which legitimizes Ananda's request on the part of the women renunciants. By praising Ananda for his vast knowledge of the Buddha's teachings, it establishes Ananda as having the authority to recognize that the women's request was in accord with those teachings. So in short, to praise Ananda exalts the nuns doing the praising. At the end of the ceremony, the abbess stresses to the audience that Ananda is responsible for the scriptures based on the Buddha's original teachings, and that his contributions, therefore, lie at the very foundation of Buddhism. By noting that the I of the thus have I heard at the beginning of many sutras refers to Ananda, she implies that all Buddhists are indebted to Ananda, and thus that nuns are not exceptional. The Anand Koshki was revived in Japan at the time when Soto nuns were beginning to work toward receiving the treatment they deemed consonant with Dogen's teachings. The nun who went on to teach the ritual to many others was the same nun who took the lead in establishing officially sanctioned training facilities for nuns. Her disciples were the ones who fought for and won equal regulations in monastic training and in teaching ranks. In this context, it is no small thing that the Ananda ritual climaxes at the point where it is announced that women are able to attain Buddhahood. Thus, through expressions of gratitude, these nuns find empowerment for their spiritual goals. I'm going to share my reasoning in creating the ritual that we'll do this afternoon. Homage to our Buddhist mothers. Through the ages, women have congregated around tables and altars to share their wisdom and empower themselves to respond to the vicissitudes of life with compassion. They needed no one's permission to do so. Many consciously understood and others intuited that communally creating and engaging in rituals is a powerful way to embody values and commitments. In a long line of women, each woman now brings all the wisdom she has gathered in her bones to the ritual. As the ritual honors and thanks all preceding women, the people who enact the ritual are empowered and demonstrate their awareness of the wisdom of their forebears. I should have made it clear we're talking about us now. Literally. The ritual illuminates the lustrous historical roots as their contributions traverse India, China, Korea, Japan, and into the West, empowering women as they transformed in each cultural milieu. The ritual fills the space in our hearts and community with female Buddhas and enlightened beings. The ritual, homage to our Buddhist mothers, begins with offerings of light, fragrance, and flowers, each activating vital qualities. Light illuminates the space with wisdom. Our incense flower offering releases the fragrance of compassion. Lotus blossoms herald the womb of enlightenment. Invoking Prajnaparamita, mother of all Buddhas in the center there, puts everyone involved with the ritual into the presence of the source of enlightened being, inviting each of us to be ever aware and in touch with the Buddha nature that animates all life. By proclaiming out loud in each other's presence, we activate our wise and compassionate nature. In paying homage to our ancestors, we vivify our gratitude to the countless women before us, naming 8 women representatives from India, China, Korea, Japan, and the West. Attentive to the historical and cultural journey of Buddhist women, We chant homage to them as we invoke their presence among us. We begin with expressing homage and gratitude to our Indian mothers. The Buddhist tradition transformed in the Chinese cultural context, Korea, and Japan. The movement into the Western context cultivates new modes as it grows from the countless women before them. Saying the names of representative women is particularly poignant in our time. I thought of that phrase when George Floyd was killed. I remembered his name. Each woman present manifests their agency through their offerings. And having invoked all Buddhist women across time, the jewel net of our interdependent being is highlighted. To recognize that we are all together in this precious womb, each a precious pearl of luminous beauty. We will pass the pearl one to another as we see each other deeply with the heart. We are each unique, with specific qualities and characteristics, and this is our perfection. Like the natural pearl we offer around the circle before offering it to Prajnaparamita. In so doing, we evoke the pearl the dragon princess offered to the Buddha upon her enlightenment as recounted in the Lotus Sutra, and affirm Dogen's teaching, all the universe is one bright pearl. The arc of the ritual infuses us with determination and strength. We are reminded, renewed, and fortified that we are a circle of interdependence, a refuge in the world. The ritual moves us to be present in each of our offerings. We recognize ourselves in a long stream of women from around the world. We see the preciousness of our Buddha wombs. As we gather our wisdom and compassion, we demonstrate we are integral to the flow of phenomenal reality. Our vows of gratitude generate beauty in a world beleaguered by injustice and suffering, manifesting ourselves as lotuses blossoming in the mud. It's so beautiful to see you all out there. So now we have some time for questions, maybe not answers, but responses, comments. We want to make this about all of us. Let's take 1 minute of silence. Just let's sit for 1 minute. I certainly can't speak for them. My observation is, please don't be offended, they don't know what we're doing over here on the whole. Some know, but it's not an active part of their world. Most don't speak English, so they aren't reading and listening to things. A few have come
some for longer periods, but most for short periods where it's been a very scheduled time. So I did, this isn't answering your question, but perhaps to intimate what some of the responses might be, and this is way back early, this is 1980. And I asked, you know, I'm doing dissertation research, but wow, she made it so clear that that was not important to her. And it was how well did I, you know, wipe the floor. But she did occasionally, with trepidation, you know, making my heart nervous when I spoke to her. I asked her about what perhaps, before I'd done all this historical research, did Western feminism at all inform or affect why Soto Zen nuns in the 20th century were able to transform the sect administration? And there was an article, one of the few things in English about Soto Zen nuns, I won't mention the author because anyway, that concluded that the regulations were changed despite the women being so inferior. And as if the men had gone in and done that. And I'm like, it's because the women brought them that they changed. And so that gives you a sense of what we didn't know in the West about what Japanese women were doing. And this was a scholar, and I'm sorry, I don't know why they didn't do more research before they made that conclusion that was totally unsubstantiated. But so I asked Aoyama Roshi, did Western feminism affect the Japanese Buddhist women? And she's usually very composed and discreet about expressing her emotions. She laughed in my face. And with like incredulity, like, why would we do that? And that's when I learned about the women, you know, in 584, they had been ordained, and the Soto Zen nuns, looking at Japanese history, saw it through that lens, and they had already started changing the sect before Western feminism was much of a thing. And so they didn't see, why do we need to look at what Western women did? Because we knew our own Buddha nature. We didn't need to go, yeah. And so one of the things I'm hoping this ritual helps us feel in our bones, because, you know, you gotta learn Japanese reading, and it's hard to get all that information. But early on, some of you probably remember, and it sometimes still lingers, the sense that it was Western women who were the ones to discover how to liberate Buddhist women. As if the women in Asia were just all subordinate, which I'm sorry, that's Orientalism. But, and I heard that, and I'm like, so I went doubting, because I knew my own mother. I'm like she may be polite in public, but like, she's a force to reckon with. And I thought, something's off about this picture of, just because women bow in respect and gratitude, they can bow precisely because they're strong enough not to be stuck on their own egos and work with the person right in front of them. And bowing in gratitude helps make things move better than saying you're wrong and I'm right. And so I don't want to create a story here, but because of that history and the difference in language and culture, there hasn't been much reason for Japanese Buddhist nuns to think about what's happening here. But those who do come, I do think they find maybe first shocking that men and women practice in monasteries together. That's like, whoa. It's hard enough if you don't add more. We all know dynamics can happen anywhere at any time. It doesn't really matter, but there is something. How do I say? So, you know, the precise way everything's done in Japanese Zen is seen as, in a way, as feedback. That's how you see your mind. That phrase many of you probably know, kata kara hairu, you enter through form. And Aoyama Roshi said explicitly, yeah, because you can maybe sense what someone's mind is, but if they're just, you know, holding their thumb, I don't know, the wrong way, and then whatever you're carrying then is not stable, it's not holding your thumb in a certain way because, like, it's just prettier. It's because it keeps things stable when you're moving. So there are these reasons why you do what you do, and it looks like, you know, people have OCD over there. But if it weren't so tight, then you wouldn't see your resistance to just doing what you were told. You're like, no, I know better. I don't need my thumb that way. I mean, the things, I'm speaking from experience here. The things we get, the stories we can make up about why all those very tight, specific ways of doing everything are just someone else's ego trip, then you realize, oh no, it's my ego trip. And to be able to work with each other, like, you know, which rags are for what thing? Well, when you're living in a big community, if you don't have agreement of how to handle those rags and which rag goes where when you're done with it, and how do you, you know, whatever you do, then someone who's wiped the altar cloth with the cloth that was on the floor, well, then someone's gonna have to go back and get all the lint that got stuck to the black lacquer that, you know, I mean, it's just very practical. And so the Japanese perspective would be, how do you see yourself so clearly and work with your ego in that very quiet but persistent way that our every action can be our teacher and inform us? If you don't have a tight method, how do you see yourself? That would be one of the primary questions. How do you see where your mind is right in that moment? Not in some abstract mind, unsincere, whatever, but like just now, I lopped off more carrot than I really needed to because I was just not paying attention. Well, if you have those tight guidelines, you get more opportunity to say, oh, better slow down, better pay attention. So that's a very long way of surmising some of the things that may come up when the Japanese women would be asked to reflect. But it's not based on research. It's based on informed observations, but not that specific question. Yeah, there was a hand in back first and then down. Okay, so I am unaware of any other place that does the Anan Koshiki in Japan. That might have changed, but I keep my ear, maybe it's not to the ground right now, but it's a foot off the ground, and I haven't heard anything. But I have no idea But I've noticed every time I asked, like I wanted Aoyama Roshi to explain to me more about the ritual, and it was never done. She gave me a copy of the ritual in the ritual book, and I asked as much about the history and she answered as much as she could. Then a few years later, which takes a long time to prepare to do this ritual, because they're practicing like for a year. You saw all the, you only saw 15 minutes of an hour and a half. And then they're doing the ritual, and then they did the filming. And so I look at it as the researcher who was taught, stay objective, keep your distance, don't contaminate the data. And that doesn't, I don't think, work ever, especially in humanities qualitative research, but so I don't know how to say this without sounding like horrible, but so every question I asked her about this, that, and the other thing, about the original site, of the nunnery, and then there's a huge renovation project because it was in shambles. Then they renovated it, and then doing the online coaching, everything I was asking about, there was, I think, a relationship between us where she wanted to know how they look to the world and saw, oh my goodness, because when you're right in the middle of something, you don't always see everything, even her, who's amazing. So to, yes, I could say this, but it seemed, from my perspective, I don't know hers, that there was this little dance we were trying to bring forward, these amazing parts of their history. But I don't think anyone else is doing this. Maybe some little play, but not likely. Women to do the ritual, they will bring in advanced teachers to join in. Some of the women there are not teachers at the nunnery. So people get called, usually not from across the country, but called in. There is a Pan-Buddhist association, Pan-Buddhist Women's Association in Japan. And so they don't necessarily hold big rituals together, but they have like conferences. And one of the things that is commonly, I don't know of late, but say 20 years ago, wow, 40 years ago, time flies. Every time they had a meeting, there was a question of, do we grow our hair out or not? And the question was always no, because they wanted to keep the clarity between choosing the monastic life and the lay life. And in some ways it was quite practical. Yeah, you have to shave your head off, but it's so much easier because once you grow your hair out, what do you do with your clothes? And then you gotta have brushing, you gotta have all these things. And so it's just, we keep it clear and clean, and then you get the feedback from strangers. If you've got a shaven head wearing robes, like, your posture's a little better. Just saying, that tends to be the way it goes. And so that feedback and that awareness, I am not just myself, I'm representing the Dharma. I think they find value in keeping that visible. Our national Pan-Buddhist things, but not many of the women tend to go. Not that they don't go, but they're so busy. And especially now, there's so many, perhaps there's so many open temples in Japan. There aren't people to pass them on to. And so if you have various rituals, everybody's always on call. So everyone's running around doing all this, and all the parishioners, I guess you can call them dankasan, going to do the memorial chanting, which is really a private therapy session, is the way they function. That the nuns go into the homes and under the auspices, not that they don't, they chant the sutras for memorial for ancestors, and then it's at the tea time, where because the nuns have done the monastic training that to survive, you do need to tame your ego to a significant extent. Otherwise, you would just go crazy because every last little thing you do, breathe, say, move, tone of voice, anything is up for scrutiny relentlessly. There's no privacy. Even in the bathroom, they have stalls that go down to the floor in Japan. But if you go in there to just cry a little bit, like, someone will notice, gee, you've been gone a little too long, and come in to the bathroom, because that was one of the few places you could get visual privacy. But then finally one young nun told me you could go out this fire escape window and hop across the roof. It's literally the ground below you on the second floor. And you could hop across, go on the other side of the slope. And there were a few square feet where even someone working in the garden would not be able to see you. That was the only place for privacy. It's 24/7, and to take in all the microscopic scrutiny 24/7, it raises the intensity and I think the speed with which you wrangle with your ego, because it becomes so clear how, gee, if I just stopped, obsessing over that or that comment or what I thought I heard they said, what tone of voice I thought I heard it in, if I just let go of that, you can just bring the heat down. And because you don't get privacy and because things are so exacting, it is, just like the train system, it is efficient, it just works like clockwork. It will get you in shape because it's way too painful to not. And so that might be one thing in the West, we don't have that level. And so I have wondered myself, and I was editing this volume, the Oxford Handbook of Buddhist Practice, and had someone try corny, maybe many of you know him. So he wrote the chapter on monastic training at Tassajara, and I was really curious, like, so how does this work? And so the talking things through, that's totally not Japanese. Talking it through and having your emotions processed, that is, as you probably all know, like serious work. And it does take taming the ego to do that in a way that is respectful of all. So I think there's just a very different approach. There isn't one right way. It's just, in Japan, it's this body focused, kata kata haidu. And in the West, because we have mind over body, we want to work with mind in our words, and we're a more logos-based society, not thinking, you can lie with your words, but not with your body. So the Japanese really don't want the words to be the foreground. But in the West, we have, word became flesh, and we have all these words that are seen as pivotal and transformative. So they're just very different root understandings of who we are. And so of course, they're gonna come up with different ways to work with them because they're different things you are working on. So they didn't quite answer the question about mixed genders, but there isn't as much of it. If anything, at big rituals when the monks and nuns are both there, the nuns know how to wear the robes, do a million prostrations, and it's still on. and the monks, do one prostration, and they're like, how do we keep this thing up? Yes. Well, so that was Aoyama roshi, a nun, and it's called the fly whisk. I think that hair is horsetail hair. So that signifies that she is the roshi. So that's what it means. So it's complicated because most Japanese women have not attended the Shakyamuni International Buddhist Women's Conferences that have been held pretty much every other year since 1989 or 7. This first was in 87 in Bulgaria, but it was organized by women who were concerned about full ordination of women. And in Japan, both monks and nuns, back in the 9th century, most of them, not all, but there was this very strong current of taking bodhisattva vows, so not, the 200, 300, whatever. So, most of the rest of the Buddhist world, impermanence though there is, see the Japanese ordained Buddhists as not fully ordained. Even though it's been back since the 9th century. And so because the focus was on ordination and the Japanese have approached it in a very different way, thinking if you follow even one precept fully, then you don't violate any of them, kind of way of thinking. So there hasn't been a meeting of concerns. Aoyama Roshi has attended a few times and is highly celebrated, but slowly Shakyamuni is expanding to be concerned about late women and the environment and the harsh abuses women experience in various settings. So maybe Japanese women will start being included. So I did, when I go, I do often present on Japanese women because that's what I know. And the first one I attended in Colombo, 1993, maybe 1993. And I talked about the women's history and how they overcame the sect regulations. And this is in Sri Lanka and Colombo, and the Dasa Samatas were trying to get something, anything. The prime minister was a female. She came to the opening ceremony, and then it was back in that day, it was like at least 7 days, 8 days, it was a long conference. And on the last day of the conference, because there weren't many scholars involved, you got a whole hour to talk like I do today. But back, now you get 15, 20 minutes at best. Because there's so many, it's wonderful, so many people have things to say. And so I gave all this history, and then again, awkward, but then there was a lunch break, and it was supposed to be the closing ceremony, and then they kept delaying starting the closing ceremony. And then Lexi had been working with the young women, and they came back. They had, using the exact same language of how I translated the Japanese women, resolved. They had their list of resolves, a letter that they wrote to the prime minister. And the Japanese women began with education. So they resolved, we want like pencils and notebooks, and we want a place to study. And they weren't beginning with, we want full recognition and bus fare because we're ordained, and not like that. But we just want this support. And they got it all. And so that's a quiet side of, I feel awkward writing it, but I do know that that's what happened. And so despite that, it's still like, but the Japanese nuns aren't fully ordained, so if we stay too close to them, well, then are we talking about giving up our effort for full ordination? And so it's a complicated issue. And I hope in my lifetime there will come a day, maybe I can do a presentation on the Hanan Koshiki. I hadn't thought of that. But I could and contextualize it like I did for you today, and maybe there's enough, I want to say, support and sense of safety that women could feel they could listen to it and be inspired, because they're not living so close to the bone on just getting some basics. That's what would need to happen for them to be able to entertain more of what the Japanese women do. But wow, that's a great question to overthink. Thank you. Thing I ached about when I was living at the nunnery was I couldn't play the keiso or the mokugyo. I was like, oh, please let me touch it. So I think in part because I've got this mixed race, mixed culture, mixed language, I've just had to make up so much of who am I, you know. It's so clear to me that there are no absolute objects and it's all fluid, and I just grew up that way. So I'm perhaps a little, I don't mean to be disrespectful of tradition and institution and lineage and authority, and I see all those dynamics, and yet I also see the people who suffer because the institutional structures don't let people fully be present. And so I have given myself carte blanche to be myself. And if it doesn't work for somebody, well, then they just don't partake in these kinds of things. Although emptiness is something you have to be very careful with. We can't invoke it to dismiss our forms, but we also need, it's their form is empty because it's form, because the forms are empty too. And so going back and forth between that and working on the Painting Enlightenment book about the Heart Sutra got me very comfortable going back and forth, back and forth. And so I don't know what Aoyama Roshi would think of what I'm doing, but I think there's a part of her that would see the Dharma and see that institutional structures are supposed to support the Dharma and not the other way around. We gather today in homage to our Buddhist mothers. We are grateful for the luminous hearts of all women who gathered wisdom in her bones and contributed to transformation in each cultural milieu as the Dharma transversed India, China, Korea, Japan, and into the West. We honor and thank those who precede us.
We illuminate the space with wisdom.
We release the fragrance of compassion.
We herald each lotus as a womb of enlightenment.
Prajnaparamita, the maternal source of enlightenment, is the liberating wisdom that crowns the spiritual quest. Personified as a glorious golden goddess, installed at the apex of the pantheon as the eternal mother, who gives birth to all Buddhas and ever-flowing font of all that Buddhas teach.
Unthinkably deep is the loving commitment of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to Mother Prajnaparamita, cherishing her, protecting her, and receiving protection. She is their true nature, matrix, guide, power, and bliss. She alone has revealed unobstructed and spontaneous omniscience to them as total awakeness. She has patiently instructed them to deal skillfully with the empty, transparent nature of existence, tenderly awakening all living beings from the dream of individuality, substantiality, and separation. From her compassion and wisdom alone have the Tathagatas miraculously come forth. She alone shows them the world as it really is. The pure presence of the awakened ones comes from her and is simply her plenitude. All Buddhas from the beginningless past, from the infinite dimensions of the present, and from the inconceivable expanse of the future, reach full enlightenment thanks to their universal wisdom mother.
Nothing.
We invite all women predecessors from all time and space to be present so we may honor and thank them. Please stand.
Homage to our Indian mothers. Each woman is a lotus blossom. Let us by name thank Mother
Homage to our Chinese mothers. Each woman is a lotus blossom. Let us by name Homage to our Korean mothers. Each woman is a lotus blossom. Let us by name thank Homage to our Japanese mothers. Each woman is a lotus blossom. Let us by name Homage to our Western mothers. Each woman is a lotus blossom. Let us by name
Each woman present manifests their agency through their offerings. Invoking all Buddhist women across time, we illuminate the jewel net of our interdependence, recognizing ourselves in this precious womb, each a precious pearl, each a precious pearl of luminous beauty. We pass the pearl one to another as we see each other deeply through the heart. We are each unique, with specific qualities and characteristics. This is our perfection. We are one bright pearl, like the natural pearl we offer around the circle before offering it to Prajna Paramita.
One bright pearl is able to express reality without naming it, and we can recognize this pearl as its name. One bright pearl communicates directly through all time, being unexhausted through all the past. It arrives through all the present. While there is a body now and a mind now, they are the bright pearl. That stalk of grass, this tree, is not a stalk of grass, is not a tree. The mountains and rivers of this world are not the mountains and rivers of this world. They are the bright pearl. All the universe is one bright pearl.
All the universe is one bright pearl.
All the universe is one bright pearl.
All the universe is one bright pearl.
All the universe is one bright pearl.
is one bright pearl.
All the universe is one bright pearl.
All the universe is one bright pearl.
All the universe is one bright pearl.
We are profoundly grateful for the nourishment bestowed upon us by a stream of women stretching across millennia and flowing from around the globe. Their presence is palpable in our ever-expanding circle of interdependence, a sacred space where wisdom and compassion bloom.
The Bodhisattva will always maintain a motherly mind, consecrated to the constant protection, education, and maturing of conscious beings, inviting and guiding them along the path of all-embracing love.
Homage to Prajnaparamita, mother of all Buddhas. Homage to her daughter, Kannon, and to all bodhisattvas, past, present, and future. May their compassion and wisdom continue to flower in our hearts, our bodies and minds, for the benefit and blessing of all beings.
願わくはこの功徳をもってあまねく一切に及ぼし我らと皆共に仏道上善こと